WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of the American in Germany, tasting often rare and exotic whiskeys. I don't know how rare and exotic this is, but I just did my review in German, so I wanted to do one in English as well. The Week of Peat, 48.3%, whiskey base number 130226, 30 ppm. And I paid 70 euros for this bottle. So the typical Balvenie bottle, two little things I'd like to mention. First of all, there is this nice little necklace, let's call it that. And there's this nice little, I'm just going to hold this in the camera actually here, the podcast. I just listened to it myself. You can hopefully take a look at the screen and do a screenshot or whatever. Here's a QR code, and this is the weekofpeat.com. That's the full story of the people and the places that helped to make the Week of Peat interesting. I thoroughly enjoyed that. It used to be called Peat Week. All goes back to Ian Millar, Millar, and he was for a total of 7 years the distillery manager at Balvenie, no longer is. And he decided after going to Islay, hey, we need to make peated whiskey here as well. Interesting enough, in the 40s, 50s, and the early 60s, Balvenie was peated. Didn't know. Who would have known? Who's had some 50s Balvenie in their glass? I sure haven't. That's way too expensive. And so what he did is he looked at the schedule of the plant and was like, okay, good. We have maintenance work here once a year, right before maintenance, then before I have to clean everything, before we tear everything apart, before we do all the repairs and everything else, let's do peat. And so what they did is, and that was in the year 2002, is the first time they actually distilled it. It is 14 years old. And so in 2017 was the first time that Peat Week came out. And then 2003 was then for 2018. And then 2004 was here for 2019. You would have thought that 2005 would have been 2020, but 2020 didn't happen. There is no Week of Peat in 2020, so they're still using the bottles from 2019. Two reasons. One, COVID. Let's call it COVID problem. Two, maybe it wasn't as much of a hit, or maybe they made too much, or maybe there's other sales problems out there that caused them not to sell as many bottles as they did in the years before. Who knows? All right, so this is 30 ppm, and so Ian Millar said, all right, 1 week we'll do peat, and the interesting thing is, in March 2019, I should have been at Balvenie. Has nothing to do with COVID this time. I was in the Speyside. I was at the Glenfarclas distillery doing my tour. I was actually in the tasting room having some wonderful bottles they took down underneath from below, and without even a label on it, with handwritten information that was from this is from 1972. Try this, Jason. I was like, oh, this is fantastic. Go back to my car, put on my phone, and it's like, oh, there's a message. Go to the mailbox, go, hello, I'm so sorry to tell you, we from the Balvenie distillery have to cancel your tour this afternoon because the tour guide has had whatever. And I was so angry. It's like, oh no. So I immediately went to Abelau and did a great tour there and had a wonderful time. But that was the highlight. It was going to be one of my highlights. I had paid 80-some pounds actually for that 1.5 hour, I think it was 2.5 hours maybe, the best experience tour, behind the scenes in the warehouse with everything included. Didn't happen. Yes, I got my money refunded and so on, but the experience, that how often are you in the Speyside and you get to have the chance and it's booked and it's paid and it doesn't happen. Oh well. Good. So going back to the rant over. Going back to Balvenie, they actually also for this and for many other bottles actually have their own malting facilities. And so what they did is they actually added a nice little oven, a stove here to the malting facilities to put that peat in there to create all that smoke. Now, if you listen to the podcast, you'll see that there's hundreds of different types of peat in Scotland alone. And if you go to Islay, of course, over the tens of thousands of years, the water level has changed, and maybe some of that those peat fields had been under seawater, under salt water before, and maybe you can taste it, you can feel it, you can experience it. There's a lot different type of vegetation that grows on the island of Islay compared to up on the hills of the Speyside. And they went up on the hill in the Speyside, and they found their little area where they actually got their peat. You have to actually then dig it out and let it dry, and they did that. And in the year 2002, they distilled their very first peated whiskey over decades there. And the engineers and the people from the sales department and everyone else came. And it's interesting. The one person says, "This reeks of smoke." And my wife says, "Don't do it again." Which is amazing. And the other people were like, "This is fantastic. Wow." It was the whole range of different experiences there while they were actually making that whiskey. And so, yeah. And the other thing that I liked, so not only just the little necklace, was the tin here. This has a nice little picture. You can see the Balvenie little distillery here. You see then the smoke. You see the peat and the wheelbarrow and all that going on there. That's very, very, very nice. You actually see one of the dunnage warehouses beside there. And in the back, you actually have the story. I mean, come on, there's the story there. That's so much information. It's amazing. I really, really like this. And this was a story told by Ian Millar. He was, as I said, the distillery manager. We have Brian here. He worked at the distillery as one of the stillmen here for 48 years. And you have David Stewart, who's still there, and he's been there now for 57. Well, that was 2019. This is 2021. 59 years of experience. So that's amazing. All right. So this is a very, 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 very interesting whiskey. Now, just two sentences about myself. 5 years ago, at least in May of 2021, so it's almost 5 years ago, I started actually doing YouTube. So I started reviewing whiskeys. And I was not a peat head. So I started with bourbon, moved over onto Irish. About 3 years later, I finally made my way to Scotch, because I wanted to have a certain experience, a certain knowledge, a certain amount of whiskeys before I go to the best class of whiskeys. Sorry, guys, in America, that would probably be our single malt Scotch whiskey. And so now for the last 2 years, I've been fairly intensively trying a lot of different Scotch whiskeys. So far, I've done over 2,000 different reviews about different whiskeys. I don't think I'm many more than Ralphie. Sorry, he's better than me, I know. But I'm still learning. And one of the things I'm still learning about is peat. I'm just starting to get in that world of Islay. I'm just starting to get in those peated whiskeys. So I started with Highland Park. I moved up to Taliska. And there's some other things I like, some other things I don't like yet. If you watch my reviews of Scarabus, the Islay single malt, love. But this is something I'm going to have to work on and still try to understand. Now, when I smell it, I get a nice chocolatey, smoky moment with lemon meringue pie behind it. It's got a very, very good nose. I'm going to compare it. Why not? In my German video, I used the Highland Park 12. This time I'm going to use the Highland Park 18. So why not impress some people here? Whoops. With my collection. So now the problem is this is more expensive. This is a €110 bottle. This is a €70 bottle. This is 43%. This is 48.3%. All right, so this is 14, this is 18. My first question of the day is, what bottle would have been perfect as a comparison whiskey? I would like something around 14 years old. I'd like something around 48%. I'd like something around 30 ppm. And I'd like something around the €70 mark, or whatever this costs in your neighborhood. Plus minus 10, 15 euros. I don't care. I'm way above the price here for this one, unfortunately. Now, nowhere could I find anywhere that it said here natural color. So, William Grant & Son, if I could ask one favor, please write down natural color, non-chill filtered on the bottle. Yes, maybe it's always that in your opinion, but how should I, as the customer, know? Please put it on the bottle. The bottle is the contract with the customer. All right, so if I smell this, I do get the nice... I get a nice whiff of that. I'm going to call it heather. So the different types of peat have different types of vegetation. So the vegetation of Islay is different than in Speyside. And here we have a lot of heather. And they actually said on the podcast, this is probably almost entirely heather peat. So very, very similar to what we have in Highland Park. On the nose, oh, okay, yeah. The 12 is not as good as the 18. The 18 is really good. I like the Highland Park 18. I can get almost 3 bottles of the 12 for 1 bottle of the 18. That's always the question of what do we need and what do we want. Oh, this is lighter, silkier. Hardly any peat compared. This is like hardly there. And this is a lot more peat. This reminds me actually of a Port Charlotte from Bunnahabhain, which I don't have here. I'm sorry. I think Port Charlotte is also 30 ppm, isn't it? All right, cheers. Hmm. Now, it's very interesting. Usually, when I close my mouth, I get to keep the peat away for a little while. Peat needs to have oxygen to actually expand into the nasal passages and go down here to our senses. And this one just kind of immediately wham overwhelmed my my smelling organ. The peat is there. The lemon meringue is there. A tiny little bit of vanilla wood is there. There's a certain sharpness about this whiskey which is unattractive. I would expect from the nose and also from 14-year-old whiskey to have actually a little bit more of a silky type of velvetiness. I don't want to say smooth, but yes, and I don't have that. I was totally disappointed. We did a nice little blind challenge, 18 different 12-year-old cherry cask matured single malts and Aberlour 12 double wood, not Aberlour, Balvenie 12 double wood, just totally lost. It was very, very young on the nose. It was like a little bit new make, and it really didn't compare to the others. And a little bit of that new makeitness is what I get here on the palate as well. Just doesn't cut it. This is a C whiskey for me. It's not the peat that bothers me. It's the alcohol sharpness that kind of pulls this down for me. It's a 70 euro bottle, people, all right? Um, and it's fairly three-dimensional. As I said, we have the peat with a heather, you have the lemon meringue, and you have a little bit of a vanilla type of woodiness, and it just, and the only thing that's different from the beginning to the end is the amount of, so I have to do this, the amount of sharpness of the alcohol. So I do this for how good it is, and I do this for how much alcohol sharpness is there. And this would actually kind of go, it pulls it down. All right, so over here, going to the Highland Park real quick, the 18, which I prefer. I'm fairly sure. Let's see if my memory serves me right. Hmm. Hmm. Much sweeter. A very light peatedness. For people, some people that are peatheads, not even detectable. Ah, okay. Tiny little bit of sharpness and tartness towards the end from the casks. And overall, a good whiskey. Definitely better. This is C plus plus B minus minus whiskey for me. More of a B minus minus. Even blind, I think I'd put a B minus. This is a C. I think I actually gave it a C plus in my German video. I think it was a lot of goodwill involved there as well. Value for money, that's where I kind of go, C minus, C minus, minus, D plus, C minus. If this would have been, this is 70 euros. If this would have been 49.99, I would have went, okay. I would have went, hey, that's not bad. If it was 59.90, I would have went, oh, okay. But it's 69.90. It's 70 euros. It's just a little bit too expensive for me and for my pocket and for my tastes at the moment. It's not something that I'm going to go, oh, yeah, that's what I really want. All right, so thank you very much for watching. Question number 1, which bottle would be the perfect comparison bottle? And number 2, what is your favorite Balvenie? I have a problem at the moment. I used to love the double wood, which I mentioned, no longer do. I used to, the 17 double wood, I used to like. There's triple woods from Balvenie, which are very, very expensive. There's not a product from Balvenie at the moment. Here, ton number 6, beautiful whiskey, very, very expensive. There's not a product out there that I can actually recommend at the moment where I go, hey, look, that's a good Balvenie for a decent price. Good Balvenies, but not for a decent price. So, what's your favorite Balvenie? WhiskyJason here, whiskey from the viewpoint of an American tasting a lot of different whiskeys at the moment. Highland Park 18, the Week of Peat, Balvenie 14. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon. And don't forget to share, like, and tell others. Bye-bye.